Okay, so let's look at what we have here. I have all of the poses now, and if we watch it, it's not going to look perfect, but so let's talk about some of the things that we may want to change. Um, so these are just my poses. I've got those done, but that doesn't mean it's all sort of melding together. Okay, and so to figure that out, we really just have to kind of flip through it frame by frame and watch it in real time to see. So again, I'm just in here, and so I'm just sort of looking at these poses to see what's happening. I think that my head probably dips a little too hard there, so I'll probably adjust that in the curves. And I think that there's a chance that I pushed my up pose a little too much, so I'm just going to pull this back down and maybe drag my foot just a little less. More than anything, just to make it look a little bit more realistic. I probably also pushed him a touch too high. So I'll go ahead and pull that back down just a little bit. Let's see what this up pose. I don't know if I think it's up as high, but we'll kind of look at that a little bit too later on. And then I do think I've kind of really overextended that foot. Again, humans are kind of lazy. And I'm not saying that necessarily a bad way, as much as we will not go through a terrible amount of effort to make a motion that we can make in an easier way. So if you actually watch somebody walk, usually their toes just barely miss the floor. Like they just almost just graze across the floor. So if we watch this, there's a chance our passing pose is a touch high too. And so I can pull that down. And so you can see that our foot just barely misses the floor. And we're going to go ahead and I'm just taking some of that exaggeration out. It's always easier to put it in and then go back and pull back a little bit later if you need to. I don't know why, but when recording these videos, sometimes my shortcut keys don't always work. So I get a little annoyed at that. So let's go ahead and watch now and see what we got. It's feeling a little better. Again, the head's probably bobbing a little bit too much, but I think that's going to be easier. Oh, sorry, I started playing it backwards. I think it's going to be a little easier to fix in other programs. I also think there's a chance that maybe my hand flips out a little too far. The left hand when it comes forward. Feels like maybe it's going a little too far. Maybe not, but maybe. So we'll kind of work with these now. But now comes the what we will call the fun part, which is where we get to edit the curves. Yay! So in this one, I'm just going to turn off all. I'll turn on none and turn on polygons. Couldn't hit 6. I don't. The texture map has broken this, and that's why you're seeing it like this. And that way we can actually just see it without the controls. And I'm going to go ahead and extend this out to something a little more reasonable. So you can see the character walk for a while. Alright, and so let's go through and literally, I know this is, I feel like I have to hammer on this because I don't feel like people really believe me when I say this. Literally, every control on this character, every control, you have to go in here and look at every curve for every control on the character. If you don't, you're being lazy. Okay? There's no getting around that. So every curve. Now some of them you may look at and be like, that one's fine. But you look at it and make that decision. Don't let Maya make that decision for you. So let's look at our Translate X first. Our Translate X is sort of our side-to-side motion, I believe. I am correct. Yeah, and we can tell that if we just go in here and we just grab a undo. That's not right. For some reason, my undos aren't working, which sucks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through here, and I just zeroed that back out to get it right. And you'll see the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this is, well, now my undo is working. We're going to make sure that this curve doesn't have this hitch in it anymore. Okay? And so I can adjust it there, and when I do that, you'll see it fixes it in the loop. Right? And then when I adjust it here, it does the same on this side over here. And so we're just kind of tweaking that to make that flow so we don't get that hitch at the end of the animation. The other hitch that I'm kind of seeing is sort of this, and that's just me kind of smoothing out that curve and just kind of maybe holding a little bit more just so the timing isn't very linear. I want to get a little bit more uneven timing. And so basically, not uneven, but sort of like a little bit more holding in some of this. So now if we were to go to the front and watch this, this is the side-to-side shift, right? And so that's kind of what we're adjusting just to kind of look at it. You're always welcome to just put this into a front view. That's not the view we were looking for. The graphic front. And so we can kind of see the character's hips moving from side to side. And that's actually working pretty well. Like, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just looking at the side-to-side motion. I understand there's a lot of other broken things in here. Translate Y. So translate Y is going to be a fun one too, but again, let's go ahead and fix this loop spot just so we don't get that hitch. Okay. Now translate Y is the up and down motion. Okay, so if we're looking at this in terms of up and down, I'm relatively happy with what's happening here, in that we kind of go up and almost hold it a little bit longer. So I'm just going to go ahead and have this happen a little earlier, like on our I guess that's our passing pose. It's going up just a touch earlier. Right. Now, something I would maybe consider with this is we could hold it just a frame longer before it sort of pounds down. So we're up here, so maybe we can, I would just consider this. I wouldn't say I would definitely do it, but I may go in here and add a key. Just kind of hold this up just a frame longer, and then I would go in here and I would make this tangent just a little sharper, and so you just get a little bit more of this sort of like whoosh down, like it kind of just pops down. And we could also adjust this tangent to kind of get a little bit of that going on as well, so you can kind of see a little bit more of what we're looking for. So it kind of has a little bit more pop down to it now. And so if we look at this in our 3D view, I'm not really noticing a terrible amount of change there. Okay. But it's there, and that's actually the interesting thing about the graph editor, is it kind of builds up over time. The decisions you make, as long as they're consistently good decisions, you're going to start seeing that kind of effect, and just overall your animation is going to get cleaner. Okay, so here's some obvious culprits here. So again, first things first. Some people actually just set this to linear. I guess that might work as well. But I actually like to manually tweak it and make sure it's flowing the way I want it to. So this is our forward and back motion, right? And so if we look at this, especially if we make it a little steeper, you can see some areas where it starts to flatten out. So like there, it kind of hesitates a little bit, but that's alright, because that's our, or I'm sorry, no, it doesn't hesitate. It goes a little, yeah, it hesitates a little bit, I guess. And so I could consider pulling that up, or I could consider pulling this back a little bit, but it doesn't need to be a perfectly straight line, because your body does sort of fluctuate in the amount it goes forward and back. However, this one seems to be particularly big, and so that makes me think that we've pushed our hips just a touch too far forward right there, and so we need to pull that back. And so it's just not quite such a quick jab forward and a slow down there. And so just by doing that, we should now have a relatively smooth hip motion forward. Okay. So these aren't giant changes I'm making, but they are real changes that I'm making. And so now let's look at our rotate X. So you can see where I was lazy in my posing. And that's not always a bad thing, but let's go ahead and try to make it not completely lazy. So okay, you can see if I start pulling this, you can start to see the scale of like how much it changes. Do I need that much of it? Probably not. So I'm just going to add a little bit just because I don't like the idea of not having made any changes at all. Like, that just seems lazy to me, and I just don't like being that guy. So I'm going to put just a little bit of rotate back on the down. Okay. Just a little bit. Right. How do I put rotate back? Yeah, to just kind of have it dragging down a little bit. And that's probably more than I even wanted to put. And that's just to give it a little bit of motion from the hips. Okay. Now, it's not absolutely necessary to have that. I'm not saying that you have to go in there and make sure this happens. I'm saying that by doing this, I'm making this motion a little more clean. If I have several objects that have no keyframes at all on them, it will start to die. And so I just don't like that. And I just like adding a little bit extra to it just to make it have some pop. I know it feels like I'm maybe overkill a little bit here, but oh goodness. Okay, so I'm getting this weird result on my okay, so I'm not really going to add very much. Sorry, I have a weird thing where I'm capturing videos. Sometimes it doesn't update my graph editor the way I want it to. So you'll see. Yeah, okay. So it's not doing it by now. So I'm not going to add too much to the translate or to the rotate Y, because that's where we get most of our hip motion in the out of the other controller. So there's another controller that I have that has some translate Y information on it, and or should have some translate Y information on it. That's how I got the. It's still giving me the wrong one, isn't it? Still showing the wrong curve down here because of this stupid video recording issue. Okay, so know that that's where that translate Y is. What I'm probably going to do is stop this video and restart it, and I'll probably combine those later, or maybe not. Maybe they'll just be separate videos. Cool. But we'll get back into polishing the curves just a little bit after that.